Welcome, welcome, welcome back to the Art of Expression. There's something that I've noticed again and again about these conversations, and they're exactly the reason why I love these conversations and why I continue to have them is because it's often those that show up with the most vulnerability, the ones offering the softness, the depth, the wisdom. They're often the ones who've walked through deep fire and have shown real grit in life. And this conversation, I would say, is really one of those. It's with David Deane Haskell. He's a wonderful writer on Substack. I heart recommend you check out his publication. He also has a book on Amazon that is called The Wounded Angel. We speak a little bit about that. And he's a writer whose words carry real rawness, reflection, and real time healing. He speaks openly about shame. Ditto, something that we have in common. He speaks about addiction, the inner child work, and that what can be a rather bumpy road to coming back to self, to remembering who we are, and to learning to trust ourselves again. And whilst he shares his magic very freely, I think what strikes me the most about his writing on Substack is that he's doing so whilst still on the journey, which is again very, very similar to myself. So we have a lot in common. It's a wonderful conversation. This isn't a here's how I fixed myself, and so therefore you can too. It's a glimpse into what it means to create and to connect while still mid-process. And I just think that there's so much magic in that. It's about what it is to write through resistance, or to show up scared, or to keep tending to the parts that want to shrink, that want to hide, to run, to stay small, and yet also somehow to continue to show up while with that, and also with deep humility and humor too. So whether you're a writer, a creator, a facilitator, a feeler, or someone who's just simply navigating your own becoming, I think you'll find that there's just so much in this conversation for you. It was a beautiful conversation, and so without further ado, enjoy. David Deane Haskell. It's so
Hello.
lovely to have this conversation today. Really looking forward to our time together. Welcome,
Me too.
welcome.
Thank you so much, Susie. Nice to meet you.
So, like so many of these wonderful conversations, I've connected with you through the glory that is Substack. You
Yep.
also have
Mhm.
a book published. I read your writing on Substack, but you also have a book
Mhm.
called The Wounded Angels on Amazon,
Mhm.
don't you have that
Yes.
published?
Yep.
Um, would you like to tell us a little about where that came from? You say that it's not a self-help book, it's more like a memoir of your psyche, and I really loved that. Where would you say Wounded Angels came from? If that's
Okay.
where you would like to
So
start, you can start wherever the heck you want, David.
I'm really happy to start there. I'd like to start by thanking you because this is really exciting for me too. I've never done a podcast before. This is my first one. So I'm
Welcome to my
really
little cozy corner of the of
excited
Tinternet.
and a little nervous. But yeah, Wounded Angels. So to go backwards a little more, I have been a writer for over a decade. So I published my first fiction book in 2013, and I wrote four suspense and science fiction books. And then right around that time, I really had a crash and burn in my life. Like really hit bottom. Really had like a lot of emotional difficulties, addiction difficulties, these kinds of things. And I basically had to get my act together and sort of start taking life seriously and that sort of thing. And right around there, around 2019, I got hit with a writer's block, and it lasted for 5 years. So a solid 5 years, 2019 to 2024. I was trying to write and I couldn't. But at the same time, I was doing a lot of like spiritual awakening stuff, emotional and spiritual healing, connecting with people, not doing the old addictive things and, doing new things, getting my health together. I lost about 100 pounds, which is roughly 45 kilos, I think. I'll try to translate everything for the European audience too. Yeah. And so I was getting healthy, but I couldn't write. And I just had other things to do. And then right around the beginning of 2024, all of a sudden the floodgates opened up and I was writing again after 5 years. I don't know really why, but except that it was kind of like it's time. And at the same time, I was doing all this inner child work, spiritual and emotional healing. And in the summer of 2024, so last year, about a year ago, the work started to sort of spill out, and I started writing what I was doing. I was writing my inner child work that was happening pretty much daily, and I would just write it as I did it, and that became Wounded Angel. And so it's an inner child healing memoir, but I don't really think it's a memoir because it's actually about the work of inner child healing, shadow work, and that kind of thing, and just my experience with it and how it felt. And so it just came out like 3 months, and then I sat on it for 6 months because the inner child didn't want anybody to see it. It was like, no, 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 do something else. Don't do nonfiction, do fiction, write a science fiction story. But it was written and it was powerful. And then so finally, at the beginning of this year, I left Japan to travel around and get my publishing business off the ground. And then on my birthday, March 13th, I published Wounded Angels. That's the first of many books that I was going to be coming out.
That's really interesting. Really interesting to hear about your writer's block.
The writer's block. It's interesting because now that I have it behind me, I like it because it's a big part of my story and it's a fact. And
Right.
it's encouragement for anybody who suffers from that stuff. I've been happy to talk about it.
Yeah.
But at the time it was really, killing me because I didn't know what else I wanted to do. I didn't know what else I was capable of doing, to make money. Basically, I've been teaching English for quite a long time and I do that online and I was doing that in Japan. In a past life, many, many moons ago, I used to be a Disney drummer. So I used to play trash can drums at Disneyland here in Japan, So I was trying to figure out, is the writing going to ever happen again? Should I quit? Should I give up? Should I figure something else out? And like for whatever reason, I had a lot of other work to do before I could start writing. And when I started writing again, it was on a different level. And
So
I'm writing
interesting.
fiction too,
Yeah.
as well. So
Amazing. That 6 month kind of hiatus, that little gap between finishing the book and publishing it is
mm.
also really interesting to me. Do you suspect that that was your body catching up to you stepping into a fuller version of you and you were recalibrating before you could actually, you know, rocket launch, as it were?
In a way, yes, I would say that it was really just more inner child work because it never ends.
Mm.
And in fact, jumping out, leaving everything behind and traveling has brought out, and I've written in this in Substack. A lot of my Substack pieces are about the triggers of traveling and what inner children come out there. And there's one inner child in my book, I call him the planner. It's from me when I was like 10 years old, sitting on the living room floor with a Guide to Disney World book and like trying to plan everything so that the grown-ups wouldn't get mad and make sure everything was okay. So the planner is always with me, so the 6 months was inner child work. It was like, okay, why am I reluctant to publish? What's the resistance? Do I want to publish? Do I want to just keep it as a journal and never, I had to sort of uh, make peace with whether I wanted this book to come out or not.
Yeah.
And yeah, so yeah, it was just sort of, there was more work to do, and it's really uh, ongoing, but it's really beautiful, so I don't mind it so much. But in the middle of it, it's not that fun. There's a lot of resistance.
Yes. I know that resistance. That when you, I think for any of us who write or create in any form, there's such catharsis and healing in that. Was there, what was there any parts that you found were met, witnessed? There was healing that your writing brought about that perhaps the healing work, the inner work, didn't even touch. Does that make sense?
Opinion on paper, you mean?
Yeah, what was there anything that
Mhm.
you, yeah, what was there anything that was perhaps revealed through the writing that the healing it didn't kind of see?
Everything, all of it. I mean, that's when I see it and hear it back, read it back or listen to it back. Because sometimes I actually write often by voice to text. And so
Right.
I'm speaking the book and then, or sometimes I'll record it and I'll listen to it back or I'll read it back and I'll start to see insights, And I run it through the AI as well. So I'll do this inner child work and I'll be like, well, what are you seeing? And the AI will, because I see AI as kind of a mirror. It spits
Yeah.
back what we're saying, but sometimes we don't really see it.
Yeah.
So I would say that's all of that. And the work itself too, even before I started writing it as a book, I was doing like written inventories of what was going on inside me. 12 step is a big part of my history as well, that sort of healing modality. And there's a lot of writing in there too. So
Yeah.
a lot of people that I trust and love talk about if we don't write it down, you know, we're kidding ourselves. When you see it in writing, that's when you're calling yourself out. You're seeing the real truth. So I would say your question is, did the writing reveal something the healing didn't see? I would say the writing is the healing. I mean, in a huge
Yeah.
way.
Yes. In your I think it's mentioned on Substack, but it's definitely mentioned in your book. You mention internal family systems, which I just love. The
Me
we
too.
worked
Me
through
too.
that book last year in meditation teacher training, and that was the first time I'd
Hmm.
come into contact with the book. Um,
Hmm.
would you like to touch on that a little? Because it's funny because this came up at the end of a conversation the other week with another Substack writer, Dr. Bronce Rice, and I didn't ask him to just expand a little on internal family systems. So, is anyone that is new to that, what would you speak to that a little?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, yeah, Dr. Rice is great. I love him, and I know he's got credentials that I don't have. So I'm not speaking as an expert on IFS or inner child for that matter. It's just my own personal experience, and I wrote that in the notes in the book too. This is my experience, and I consider it something sort of like healing through narrative. We share these narratives, and we can show each other what worked and how it feels, and sort of help each other along. That's my angle. But as far as IFS, internal family systems, I think it's very similar to inner child, but in some ways they expand on it. I don't know who they are. I'm saying they, maybe whoever conceptualized it. But talking about the parts or the facets of ourselves, not necessarily a fixed, inner child. Like I said, the planner, like I can see this kid. There's pictures of me when I was 10. I remember sitting on so that there's a figure there. But with internal family systems, you can have a part that's well, the perfect example I would say is inner critic. The inner critic is a part. And I had a huge cathartic experience with the inner critic a few months back, which consists, and I wrote about this on Substack too, which consisted of, and it's my most popular article, actually, most viewed article, because the first thing when I connected with this part, the inner critic, was the fact that he didn't like being called that. He was like, "Don't call me that. I'm David. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to get our act together. I'm trying to make sure we, have money and don't end up sleeping under a bridge and don't torpedo all our relationships. That's why I'm on you all the time. Don't call me such a negative thing." I was like, "Okay, David, can we work? I want this too. So can we like not like, bash me every day, because it's not inner critic. It's like, you idiot, what are you doing?" And so there was a real kind of internal family systems experienced it because it's not what I would call inner child, but it's a part of me. And so I think that's where IFS sort of expands on the whole thing. And one more thing that happened to me very recently, like a week or two ago, as I say, this is really ongoing. All the stuff is ongoing, and I love it. Is there was another voice, another part. Um, I don't even remember what was the concern, but I remember trying to get wrap my head around where was this coming from, which inner child is this, what part is this, and it turned out it was a critical voice from when I was a kid. It wasn't even me. It was a voice of a family member who was doing the best they could and was, trying and loving and whatnot, but was very critical. And that voice became internalized when I was a kid. And then that voice was like telling me what to do. And I was like, wow, that isn't even, I mean, it's a part of me because it's in me. It became, internalized, but it didn't come from me. And you get a lot of that too. So I hope that's all making some sense.
Mm.
You know?
Yeah, it's so powerful. Um, when there's been a lot of pain in life, in the first, I think it's the first paragraph of the first chapter of your book, you make it very clear of that kind of razor sharp fear in, of being, I think when there's been a lot of pain, the fear of being judged, criticized, shunned, ostracized, rejected is, abandoned is very visceral, certainly is with me. Still, when I put out work, what parts would you say show up when you come to write and you come to express this work express your story?
Judgment.
Fear of judgment. Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely. Every time. And in Substack articles, social media, reaching out to people, of course, publishing books. And then in addition to that, there's the fear of judgment, but then there's also the fear of being unimportant, of being ignored, which, we've all gone through that too. Like we put out something we're really happy about, proud of, and then nobody responds, or um, maybe a couple of people respond, but you don't feel like you're getting the same kind of feedback that you were expecting. And then it's like, oh, I'm not important at all. And that's also fear of being judged, isn't it? Fear,
Mm.
because of judgment. Why are you writing? You're not important. And
Yeah.
I feel that very strongly. And so then there's the damned if you do, damned if you don't, because you don't want anybody reading it and criticizing, but then you want a lot of people to read it. And having written 4 books long ago, not everybody's going to like what you write. And I haven't gotten a whole lot of negative feedback on Wounded Angels yet, but some people are not going to like it if it gains more traction. And some people are going to have negative, oh, he's navel gazing, or he's not focused on the right things, or whatever. I don't know. Here I am, like mentally preparing. This is a part of me preparing for what they might say, right? I don't
Yeah.
know, but I've gotten my share of negative reviews, and I've gotten my share of positive reviews, and the negative ones are the ones that you get, all of a sudden you feel the shame and the fear, and you go, oh, somebody's got something to say about me. And well, people do, and people have the right to their opinions, um, but I have the right to mine as well. I'm proud of my work. I'm proud of what I do, and I think I do the best I can. If somebody doesn't, if what I write is not their cup of tea, then that's not my audience, right?
Yeah.
That's what I tell myself anyway, but it still hurts. Right?
Yeah. And I
Mm-hmm.
think what you've touched on there is exactly why I wanted these conversations. It's that kind of knowing that you have magic to put into the world, and at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, the fear around all that, and then also that kind of liminal space where no one's, you feels like you're speaking to the void, and
Right.
like for me, it's sometimes I'm kind of working through all of this fear of posting, and then there's not even, there's no comment or there's nothing in it. It's like Oh, that's drunk too. And it's funny
Hmm.
because and I do think it's allowing ourselves to be received and to be loved. There was a I was watching one of my favorite YouTubers just yesterday, and she'd reached some milestone number of subscribers, and I think it was like 400,000, and she was like, I couldn't do this work if it wasn't for the love that you give me, and I'm so, so grateful. And she was very emotional when she was thanking her audience, and I just thought, oh, that love, receiving that love must really help so much. And yet at the same time, I also am aware of the need to detach from that love, to detach any sense of worth from what people's response is, whether perceived bad or for good. Do you know what I mean? It's really interesting that you've touched on all of that in that answer. Fantastic.
Wait, yeah, and I think it can lift you up in a healthy way, and that can really be beautiful. But also, if you're needing that, and
Yes.
I've experienced that a lot, it doesn't work
Yeah.
because you could have 99 people tell you great job, and one person
Yeah.
say it's so so, and the 99 people obviously have no credentials at all,
Yeah.
because it's me that's really saying I'm not that great, and
Yeah.
I'm looking for a way to build a case on that,
Yeah.
right? That's all, that's trauma stuff right there.
Mm.
So I really had to come to a self-love place where, and I was talking to a friend about this just the other day, that the way I look at myself a lot when I make a mistake or when things kind of freak me out is that I'm feeling this from a childlike perspective. And I used to use the word childish, but I changed. I said I don't use childish anymore. Because there's too much negativity there. I said childlike,
Yes.
and
Mm.
I'm okay with it, And I'm like, yeah, this is like I'm seeing things through the eyes of a child, which includes the fear, the shame, the worry about, what are the grown-ups going to say, um, and so I had to come to a real uh, love of myself in that way, like to love my childlike self and love the fact that I am wanting attention and I am wanting love and I am wanting approval. But at the same time, also saying, I'm going to give that to myself first. I have to. And it doesn't happen immediately. It doesn't happen right away. Some people hate affirmations, but that's one thing that, you go from cringe to, oh, wow, this is actually kind of working. I, I did an affirmation exercise. This was last year. This is when I was writing Wounded Angels. There were 4 affirmations that I forced myself to say every day. I love myself. I honor myself. I trust myself. I value myself.
Mm.
I hated every word. I couldn't stand it. Oh, this is disgusting. It's horrible. It's like I couldn't even say it. But the one that was the most powerfully resistant in my body was I valued myself. Interestingly, because like I saw myself as worthless. And this was from childhood trauma, abandonment stuff, and feeling like I don't have any value and I have to somehow prove myself every minute or people are going to discard me. And so there was not a lot of self-love and not a lot of self-valuing there. And so if 1,000 people or 1,000,000 people, and you see this in celebrities all the time, who wind up crashing and burning, even though they're getting the love of millions, because that isn't it, because it's like a high. It'll work for a little while and then you'll crash again.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true. I sometimes think that it's so easy to look at fame and fortune and think, well, they've got it okay. They've
Mhm.
got the money, they've got the resources or whatever, and actually those who have managed to not just surviving is one thing, but to thrive, my goodness, they've probably undoubtedly had to do so much work in a
Mhm.
way in order to what
Mhm.
a polarity for them to experience in this life. Goodness me. You
The
touched
healthy
on,
ones. Yeah.
yeah. You touched on something there about trust. You trust, one of your affirmations was, I think, you trust yourself, I think.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a time when a protector part has shown up and that you've kind of taken that as truth? And how have then you trusted yourself to work through that?
Um, well, I'll say I'm not as versed in internal family systems as some people, so I have read it, protective part and firefighter and this sort of thing, but I don't see my internal system quite the same way. So I
Right.
don't know, like, what? Give me an example of protective part. What do you mean?
So for example, it could show up as fear. So for example,
Mhm.
like, oh, I'm just not cut out for this. This isn't,
Ah, okay.
like,
Mhm.
I can't be visible. I can't put myself out there, be the fullest expression of myself. Really, is what, because
Mm.
I'm not cut out for it. And actually, it's just some part of it that's trying to protect us and to keep us safe.
So a part that's saying don't trust yourself. Is that
Don't say that again.
don't
Don't.
a part that's saying don't
Yes.
trust yourself? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
I've had that a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and then what I did was I put myself in the hands of others for a while. There was a lot of codependency in my history as well. Putting people up on pedestals and saying, I'm going to listen to that person. If they are happy with me, then I'm okay.
Yeah.
That was another addiction that I fell into that almost killed me. And it doesn't work. It's destructive. And so coming to trust yourself. And now I don't trust myself. I trust myself in connection with God. And I don't want to go. I always wonder how far to go with the spiritual religious angle, because for me, I've had a spiritual awakening in 2020, and that has been an absolute game changer and a huge part of my life since then. So for me, I trust myself when I'm grounded and prayerful and in fit spiritual condition, as it were. And that's a different thing. That's where I will trust myself, and I'll stand behind my decisions and that sort of thing. But I don't always trust myself if I'm like, careening down the road in a sports car and, doing all kinds of destructive stuff that you shouldn't trust yourself, right? And so that's it's a real conundrum, isn't it? Because there are times when I really shouldn't have trusted myself. So yeah, I trust myself. All of those affirmations come from a certain place of being grounded, in place of being spiritual, because I love myself could turn into being conceited very easily. You know, um, I honor myself as, like, no matter what I do, even if I mistreat a dog and yell at a convenience store worker, I still honor myself because I'm so great. Well,
Mm.
there's that's all of those affirmations have to be treated with care too,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm glad you touched on the awakening in
Mm.
2020. You don't
Yeah.
have to spill unless you really want to, but what would you
Mhm.
say changed after that moment? How did that help you to, whether it be emotionally, practically, what did that change for you?
Well, I mean, everything and everything in a sense that, like, I would say there's two halves of my life, really. Like, birth to June 2020 and then June 2020 from now. And everything changed, and it never went 100% back to before then. But I have had ups and downs for sure. And, there's certainly been parts where I felt like I was going all the way backwards, to, like, almost in trouble, because I was really in trouble. I was, suicidal stuff, addiction, as I said. Um, I was just in huge, huge trouble for most of my adult life. And, the weight, the food, all that too. Um, and that was, I didn't have, a spiritual center to speak of. I was very defiant. I was very self-pitying. I was very angry at the world, and I had reason because I had some stuff go down when I was a kid, and it's in the book that no kid should have to go through, and that's a fact that kind of defines me even to this day, and really, had such an effect on me, and I felt like the world was rejecting me because I was so broken. I didn't have friends when I was a kid, couldn't have a conversation like this to save my life, even up until 2020. Um, and then, yeah, so when that happened, and I felt like there was something, greater than me out there um, that I could tap into and start to really, put a life together that I wanted and be okay. Like really be, that was maybe the first time I felt like I might be okay. That's what changed in June of 2020. And since then I've felt often that I might be okay. Not every day. And but certainly I'm having a great day today. I'm really enjoying talking to you. This is an amazing opportunity from halfway across the world. I'm sitting here in a nice place with a pool behind me that I could jump into when the weather gets a little better. So, life's not
Yeah.
bad, and things are okay.
Yeah.
And I feel grateful for it. And gratitude also started it. Gratitude, okay, I have to say, gratitude came a little bit before that.
Right.
Because I had a dear friend, someone I love to this day, we're very close friends, who was just encouraging me. This was in 2019 to just, find something to be grateful for. Like, it's a really nice day and you just went for a bike ride. Are you grateful for that? And I was like, yeah, I guess, and I was still really like just unhappy and just unwell, just really unwell. So I started buying into his gratitude stuff. I started buying into the affirmation stuff a little bit before the spiritual awakening. So that I think one thing led to the other,
Mm.
because it was really hard for me to find gratitude before that.
It's there's something I've noticed on the old healing journey, and I wonder whether you can relate. Is that sometimes there's a tendency to feel like I'm backsliding, and actually I'm just feeling more.
Mhm.
And really that makes total sense because I would have disassociated perhaps behind religious doctrine. There was the narcolepsy, so the narcolepsy would kind of come in and just shut me down. Let's just escape into sleep. Um, you kind of all of that, and yet actually now sometimes the more awake or the more aware I become, the more in my body I live. I'm there's the gut punch of any kind of level of misattunement sometimes feels so much more visceral now, and it's very easy to judge that, I find. Do you ever, and I work very hard not to kind of like, this is good, this is bad, it's just all part of the process, the glorious process. Is there any time or phases that you go through where you feel that real intensity of being present, being in your body, and it's felt like um, a regression in a way, and yet actually, we know it's always only ever expansion. How do you learn to trust that? It comes back to trust again. How do you learn to trust that this is all part of the wonder of it all?
It's a good question. Um, I would say, and yes, and I've experienced plenty of that too. I think we all do. And I don't know, maybe some people don't. You hear these kind of guru types that are like, and then everything was fine for the rest of my life. Really happy now. You can too. I,
Eckhart Tolle. I can think of maybe Eckhart
well,
Tolle
that,
and who
yeah.
else? Who's the self-inquiry lady? Her name eludes me right now, but yeah.
Look, Tolle, I think is really for real. Actually, it's funny because I read his book decades ago when I was so unwell. I was like, why isn't this working for me? I had a lot of work to do. But I think he's for real, but
Yeah.
very rare.
Yeah.
And that's just his story. But he doesn't, I also notice he doesn't seem to, try to insist that other people will be able to do that. He's pretty real. I like that guy a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, me
But
too.
it hasn't been my experience. And I
Yeah,
said,
no.
I've said to people like, oh, I had a real Eckhart Tolle moment. I had a real Eckhart Tolle day, where it's like I'm sitting there looking at a flower bed and like feeling like time stopped, but that's very few and far between. I'm not that much of a meditator. I'm not a guy that really can do that very often, but I have had those moments. But as far as the regression though, and the that being important is one thing I believe in. Well, two things I believe. One is I can't speak for anybody but myself. So, when people talk about, why is there starvation? Why is there with children suffering? Why is this? Why is the world so horrible? And they bring spirituality into all that. I can't speak for anybody. So, if you're wondering about the suffering of somebody else, ask them. But I can speak to my own, and I have been through the ringer in some ways. And I honestly have to say, I feel all of that brought me to this beautiful moment now. And I'm not saying that, like, God sets up these traps and minefields and stuff and punishes us to make it work. It's not like that, but it's like all of it has just sort of come together for me, especially recently, into something where I can really appreciate the beauty of life and being alive, and acknowledge that some of it was really rough, that I really suffered. Um, and I still, and the regressions too, like a lot of it these days, I haven't had anything really major happen. I haven't had any tragedies in my life, thankfully, not recently. I haven't had any, I've had setbacks, and then I fix them. But it feels really rough in the moment, and sometimes I lose it, and sometimes I'm unkind to the convenience store worker or something like that, and have to go back and apologize or whatever. But all that stuff, I feel the other thing about that is you were talking about noticing it. And I thought the word mindfulness when you were saying that. We notice all the good, but we also notice all the bad. But I think in the moment, I don't. I tend to disassociate, or kind of get really caught up in my emotions, become really childlike, and can act out and behave in a childlike way. And I'm not really mindful in those moments. And again, there's an article on Substack I wrote about that as well, which was I was dissociated for a week in survival mode without even realizing it. What happened was my bank card got defrauded, and so I lost access to my main bank account. I'm traveling in these foreign countries, and it was really scary. But I have a backup bank account, and I wasn't in any danger. But it's like, and then I had to contact the bank and all this. And I was, yeah, I can handle it. I'm mindful. I'm good. I'll be fine. But inside, the parts, the inner child was freaking out, and I stopped. I started skipping meals. Like it's like, "Oh, I don't need dinner. I need to lose weight anyway," or and I wasn't sleeping well, and but I was mentally justifying all of that as not to do with the lack of money, not to do with the bank thing. But when I finally got the emergency card and got some cash out, literally the minute I got some cash out of the ATM machine, my whole body relaxed. I took a long bike ride by the beach, and I was hungry. And I went and I had a big dinner, and I realized I've been in survival mode for a week. And my body, don't eat, don't spend any money, don't, you're in trouble. We're really in danger here. And I wasn't seeing that throughout the whole week. In fact, my psyche was making up different excuses, like I need to lose weight, which wasn't really true, or these kinds of things, to sort of trick me into not looking into it too closely, because this might be a protective part. I think if you're thinking like this, and like the protective part doesn't want you to know that it's protecting, because like if I notice it, then I might not be doing these extreme things that it thinks that I need to do. So yeah. So
What
anyway.
what a fantastic story, really, to illustrate how things hide from us There's two
Mhm.
things that I would love to delve into there in a minute. Distraction and how we love to distract ourselves from just sitting with it. We'll do
Mhm.
everything to distract ourselves.
Mhm.
But also it just came to mind there that like I had a friend tell me yesterday about her mom who was really, really angry about something, just something that had come up in conversation. She would not let it drop. And she'd clearly been very, very triggered. She was in fight mode. She was raging and angry. And yet that lady, lovely lady, wouldn't know what a trigger was, if it had come and slapped her on the face. People are just in these states without any awareness, oftentimes, aren't they? Um, her whole kind of nervous system had been activated and in kind of a fight mode. What would you whisper to every human alive, if you were able, about the importance of that awareness? Because I know you said that you weren't aware for that week, but the fact is that you did come back to the awareness. Isn't that the important thing? What would you whisper to every human, if you could, about the importance about becoming aware of when some inner wound has been activated and we're suddenly in fight mode or in all of the survival responses.
Yeah, that's a tough one because not that many people are into this stuff, right? And the thing is, I wouldn't personally go to the wound or to the tough stuff if I was trying to, and I wouldn't really try to convince somebody, but if somebody came to me and asked me about it, because I would only really approach it if somebody wants to know. And if they did, I would say, you know, are you noticing the good stuff? Because that again, going back to 2019 and the gratitude, that was the start for me. It was like, today sucks. It's a bad day, and I stubbed my toe and whatever. And well, what are you noticing? Any of the good stuff? What good things happened? And I think you start with that. If somebody's wanting to get a little bit more expansive, that sort of thing, that's where you start. You have to start with the good stuff, I think, because if you're telling somebody to bring up pain, I mean, they're never gonna want to do that, and nobody wants to do that, and we don't want to either, right? But that's kind of part of the whole doing the whole thing. But that comes later, I think. I think it. Yeah, I would say if you say whisper to somebody about that, I would say, well, what are you noticing today that's good? What do what good things happen to you? How did that feel? That's the thing too, is like bringing in emotions. And again, this it can tend to be tougher, I think, for men than women in some cases, because men can often think emotions are not manly or not masculine, that sort of thing. So if you ask a guy, well, how did that make you feel? And some women too, they'll often say, oh, I don't know, or yeah, I felt good, I felt okay. But what was the emotion there? Were you joyful? Were you a little bit sad? How did you feel? These kind of emotional noticings, I think, is a good start, a good place to start.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I've not really put that the connection. I remember like since 2020, 2021, 2022, being very, very immersed in daily gratitude practice. And now I wonder whether that's created a lot more safety in the body to then to reach deeper layers. It's really interesting. I've never really heard it put that way before. Yeah, interesting. And then distraction. You mentioned in your book about doing anything, watching reruns of The West Wing on YouTube,
Yeah.
anything to avoid sitting. I had an experience yesterday, and there was a very deep shame part of me that really was begging me for hours just to come and sit with me, and I did everything. And when I finally did, I actually had what I can only describe as a kind of an orgasm that which kind of as energy kind of just there was just immediate like freedom energy freed up because I'd sat with that part that was so uncomfortable. What helps you to stop running, numbing, distracting so that you can, just gently sit with the parts?
Yeah, and I refer to it as unhealthy self-soothing in some ways, anything potato chips, whatever, scrolling, there's a million ways. Um, I don't beat myself up too much for it. That's one thing. I these days, because I'm more mindful than I used to be, I do know, like I usually know, it's like there's something going on. This is why am I doing YouTube shorts for the last 40 minutes? There's
Yeah,
something going on,
yeah,
and so I I kind of allow it. I used to feel a lot of shame for that. I don't anymore, not much. Um, I'm kind of, and this is when it comes to shame, I have a lot of experience because this is the worst day of my life when I was 9 years old involved kind of a shame shock. Um, it's in my book. It's actually the ultimate chapter in the book. The realization of what shame feels like, and this was toxic shame, unearned, nothing to do with me. It was a trauma thing. So feeling and I still grapple with that. But, feeling shame for doing what our what we were designed to do, which is like distract. Things are going wrong. You need a distraction. Because this is going to be too much. This is going to be too painful. You can't handle this. It makes all the sense in the world. And then when it gets too much, it can become addictive. Weight gain, unhealthy food, and alcohol, drugs, whatever, people, gambling. But if it's on a low enough level, I'm not unhealthy about it. I'm doing okay. I allow it to a point, but then I know I need to get somewhere. Because it just bothers me too much. It bothers me on a low level until I address it. And that's there's nothing I can really do about it. It's not like approaching it by choice. It's approaching it because the pain is the greater of two evils. You know.
yeah. I really like that you touched on not adding to the shame in the healing
Oh,
inner
yeah.
work, because I think sometimes I know for myself in recent years I have taken it all very, very seriously. And it becomes then become like a whole shame upon shame.
Yep.
And or kind
Hmm.
of and also I think as well out there in what what I might consume, there's a lot of subtle ways of shaming in the spirit, this quote unquote spiritual world. You're not doing
Hmm.
it right. If you're not manifesting, you mustn't be doing it right. If you're not, all of the things. So I just think it's just when if we're wanting to bring it all back to love, that's the goal, isn't it? To bring it all back to love. I think
Yeah.
sometimes, yeah, I really appreciated that what you said. To not shame, to quit with the shame
Yeah.
on the
I
shame.
mean, oh my God, I ate a bag of chips. I mean, I've eaten a bag of chips a lot of times. Um, it, and that I've spent most of my life thinking, am I doing this right? And I don't think there is any right or wrong. I mean,
Yeah,
unless you're Hitler or something, and he did it wrong.
yeah,
But I'm not going around harming people on purpose, or I'm doing the best I can um,
mm,
to do the best I can. I'm as good as I can to my friends and family. I don't, I don't commit crimes, scam people and that kind of thing. So, the higher levels of like, am I happy or not? That's, I'm a lot happier than I used to be, but am I doing it right? I don't know. I often think I'm not. So,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. I think what that's what I really appreciate about your writing. Sometimes I think whenever I read someone who's coming across as some kind of a guru, I love the phrase that we're teacher, master, and student all at the same time. And I think that's what I appreciate about your writing is that is it so genuinely humble, and then that then creates a kind of a ripple effect of me too, doesn't it? You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And thank you. I hope so. And as I said, that's the way that I write. I write by voice dictation, that sort of thing. So I think, I'm really just talking to you when I write. I'm talking to and or talking to myself as well. It's doing if I'm doing any child writing, it's an internal dialogue. It's, that sort of thing, which is like just what's going on here, and that's I think pretty much my approach. That, I mean, there are gurus out there that, and I don't doubt some of them. I doubt some of them. There are charlatans out there. There really are, and
Mm.
I'm not okay with people that make false, empty promises, and then, if things don't go the way they promise, then it must be your fault. You must be doing it wrong. You haven't manifested $5 million this month. Well, you're just not you're not listening to me. You're not following me. And that goes back to my codependency issues and, like, trusting someone else to be my, to tell me what's what, to tell me what, my integrity should be telling me, to tell me what my heart should be telling me. And so, yeah, I mean, but there are some very powerful spiritual people. That's why I
Mm.
think guru is kind of a loaded term. But I mean, it's interesting because this homestay where I'm staying here in Bali um, belongs to spiritual caste. I find they are. I guess they have a caste system here in Indonesia where they have, like, the spiritual caste. And I was talking to the owner about that, and he goes around and does religious rituals every morning, and very nice guy and very, humble guy. And I just think, wow, he's got a powerful spiritual life going on. He's very quiet about it.
Mm.
Isn't that cool? And, some people go out and are teachers in that sense, and that's great too. So, I don't doubt there are people that really devote their life to this stuff, and I don't. Because, like, I'm spending too much of my life riding around on scooters in Southeast Asia and, like,
Yeah.
having a good time and hanging out with my friends.
Living.
And, well, this is the life that I'm drawn to. I'm not interested in going to, medicate 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't think I could do that anyway because of my phone addiction. So, speaking of unhealthy self-soothing, you know, I think that's all
I just
they,
love the
they,
honesty. I love it.
I know, right? Well, they have these 10-day intense meditation retreats all over Southeast Asia, right? And the first thing you have to do is hand over your phone. I was like,
Mm.
I might do a 3-day someday. I don't know. Yeah, not yet.
Oh, dear me. Do you know what always horrifies me about those is that you're not even allowed a pen and a paper. Oh, I'm
Oh,
like, oh,
really?
can I not even just write down any inspirations or epiphanies, or it's that terrifies me.
Guess not. I
Yeah.
guess not. Yeah.
No. Um, so wonderful to have this chat. Is there any concluding whispers that you would love to put out there?
I don't know about whispers, but I'm really impressed with this conversation because it's so nice to be able to talk to somebody who gets it, and, like, hearing your questions and also the way that you're responding. It's like, this is kind of the whole reason that I'm out doing this stuff, is because I want to connect with
Yeah.
people that are on the same sort of path. It doesn't have to be the same. It doesn't have to be, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. It's great to have these conversations. So I'm so appreciative and grateful for the opportunity. And I hope I did all right. As I said, I've never done a podcast before, so it's kind of nervous, but
You
it's really,
you you've been absolutely fantastic. I love that what you say about the what what works for you might not work for me, and it's all good.
Hmm.
And because my life was one of such religious polarity, it's so nice now to kind of just view everything as like a buffet, and I can kind of, oh, I'll pick that, and oh, I'll leave that, and I don't really like that teaching, but I love that, and all of that, and it kind of just to lose the drop the judgment, and the, oh, I meditate. I meditate for at least 2 hours a day. All of that. And I just really,
Good
really,
idea.
really appreciate your authenticity. Really.
Thank you so much, Susie. I really appreciate
Yeah.
you too.
Bless you so much. And I wish now that this was the moment where I could just turn around and uh, behind me is just a backdrop curtain, and I actually just appear in the pool or
Next
something.
door. Should I jump
Yeah,
in? Should I run
yeah,
back there and jump
let's
in and
go
prove
in.
that it's a real
Let's
pool?
go and get the armbands and
It's
jump in.
Yeah, it's a little bit
That would
chilly.
be.
I would, but it's a little bit chilly.
I don't
Next
think it
time.
can be any more chilly than in Liverpool in our summer right now. So thank you so much, David. Really appreciative. And
Thank
I'll
you,
put all
Susie.
of the
Thank
links
you.
to your book and your Substack and all of the magic in the
Awesome.
notes. Bless you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.